Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Q&A with this year's Current RAs. My name is Haley Bernard-Handel, and I'm the coordinator for selection and leadership here at UCF. And I'm really excited to be a part of this year's selection cycle for the RA position. And I'm lucky enough to have three of our amazing RAs helping me out today. And I'm going to let them each introduce themselves. So go ahead and get started.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Zoe. I am in Towers this year. I am a sophomore, and my major is aerospace engineering.
Hi, everybody. My name's Kennedy. I am a senior here at UCF. I'm studying psychology and philosophy, and I'm currently an RA at Rosen.
Hi, everyone. My name's Nathan. I currently work in Neptune, and I am a senior majoring in visual arts and emerging media management.
Awesome. And again, thank you all for being here. We're so excited to have our viewers here tonight to ask us questions. We do have an hour. We're going to cut off right at 7 o'clock. So please feel free, if you're on YouTube or on Facebook, to go ahead and start putting questions that you have for these amazing RAs into the comment box. It can range from what their everyday life as an RA looks like, what their normal duties, functions, and responsibilities look like. It can be about their application and interview process, because I know many of you are probably going through the application process right now. And so please feel free to go start putting anything in the chat that you would like, and they're here to answer them. I'm going to pretty much stay as a moderator, but if there's any specific more technical or logistical questions about the RA position or the selection process, I may step in and help there. But for the most part, I'm going to leave it up to Zoe, Kennedy, and Nathan to kind of give you their unfiltered look at what an RA life is like to help prepare you more throughout this selection process. So we have our first question. Hi, I was curious as to how employment works if I sign up for the summer semester. Will I have to sign up again to continue being an RA for the next fall and spring term? Anybody specifically want to answer? Maybe Zoe, you started in spring. Do you want to talk about, you worked summer, right?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, why don't you talk about kind of the application process and going from working in summer and in fall and what that looks like.
Okay, so yeah, I started in the spring, so that's not typically the usual hiring cycle. Usually our contracts, they go from May to May. So typically your contract will be, you'll get a community saying, like, you're going to work in this community. That community is going to be for your fall community. So like, I knew I was going to work in Towers for the fall, but it's optional to work summer. I knew I wanted to work summer. So what we do is we do a preference. If you want to work summer or not, you say yes or no, and then you preference the communities that you would like to work in. It can be different from your fall community. It could be the same one. It just depends on kind of what your cycle is at that point. So when you go into it for the summer semester, most of our summers are going to be summer B, which is the last 6 weeks of the summer semester. If you are taking classes, there is a way that you can do the whole summer, which is summer C, so summer A and B, but that's something to talk to Haley about. That is a little bit more beyond what I have experienced, but I worked the whole summer. So I was working summer C in Neptune. So there's definitely a way that you are able to do that. But if you want to do it for the next summer as well, we'll have something that goes out to you guys, and that'll be, again, that yes or no, do you want to work, that kind of thing. And we can work it out with academics. We can work it out with anything that takes priority over housing. So it could be like academics, you have an internship, you have you're studying abroad, those kind of things. But yeah, so for each summer, you could just say, yes, I would like to work, and then we will place you from there.
Yeah, so just to give like a little bit of context behind it, that was a perfect answer from Zoe. We hire our RAs for a May to May contract. So unlike many other schools, we don't hire August to May. We hire for the entire year, and then we give the option to be excused from summer. So we allow several of RAs, it's not a guarantee, but we allow several of RAs to be excused from their work responsibilities over summer. We allow some to work summer B, as Zoe mentioned, which is starting in mid to late June. And then we have some who work all of summer C, which is literally May to August. So you just stay the whole time. That's a great question. Thank you. We have our next question from Sophia. Is being an RA very time consuming? Like, do you struggle with balancing it and schoolwork? I would love to have all three of you all answer it. I think this is a really good question. If you guys can throw in like what else you do outside of the RA role a little bit, that would be great. So since Zoe just went, maybe we go Nathan, Kennedy, then Zoe. Does that sound good? Okay, cool. Nathan, take it away.
Yeah, the RA role, it kind of ebbs and flows, I'll say. We definitely have busy seasons. I'm gonna be honest, August, don't talk to me. Like, you are constantly working, but I think while you are in school, it kind of just depends where we're at in the year. I would say on a weekly basis, I think you can balance it pretty well. Personally, for me, you do work one duty day a week, and I try to make, while I'm on duty in the office, I try to work on other housing stuff while I'm on duty, kill two birds with one stone. And then I try to block out just a little bit of time, throughout the week to work on it. But there are times that it can be a little difficult, but as long as you have kind of your own parameters in place to prevent that, and of course, prioritize your schoolwork, I say that it's fairly easy to manage.
Thanks.
Yeah. Jumping off what Nathan said, yes, it can be time consuming sometimes, and other times it's like a very simple job where you have no other responsibilities other than like probably providing work for the residents, like doing what they need, like lockouts and whatnot. And that usually happens during the breaks. If you're here like an all year community like Rosen or like Towers, where we're usually constantly working, whereas like other communities you might see time where they have that break in summer if they want to have it. But here, like generally all RAs, we get about up to 15 hours of outside work. It's usually 10 without like your supervisor having to look at it. Myself, I actually work in student government as well as being an RA. So it's definitely like to each their own on how you like figure out your time, because you want to make sure you're prioritizing your RA's responsibilities as well as outside responsibilities, as well as being a full-time student, because I have 2 degrees I'm getting. So it's all about figuring out your own balance, and ask your fellow RAs if you become an RA to like help you do that, and your supervisor. Like, it's all about time management and building that skill.
Awesome. Thank you, Kennedy and Zoe.
Yeah, I think honestly it was a little hard at first, because being a spring hire was a little bit different than how you normally would start, because you would normally start in like summer, or most people start in fall. It's a little bit easier to get to know the residents when you start in fall, because you're starting the same time as them. So I think it really does depend, but I think for it depends like what your workload is as well. So if you're going to take a little bit easier classes, it's a little bit easier. For me, my major is aerospace engineering. My classes are ramping up. I understand it's a little bit harder, but at the same time, I think that being an RA is really a great headspace kind of thing. It's a great way if you love crafting, if you love decorating, if you like getting into the themes. I think that's a great way. It really encompasses the community of the residence halls. And personally, I work at NASA on the weekends, so I'm still able to maintain my job out there. there, still able to maintain my degree program. And so I think that being an RA adds to it more than it would take away.
Casual NASA on the weekends job, like we all have on the side. Okay, so thank you very much, Zoe. Our next question is from Nia or Naya. So sorry. Hi. How long will it take us to hear back if we applied for spring semester? Zoe, I'm going to throw that one back to you, as you started in the spring, to kind of talk about what that process looked like for you, and then I can give more of like the legit like dates type of vibe if you want to give the feel.
Okay, I'll give you the feel of what happened. So I started, I lived in one of the towers as a freshman. I was really nervous because I wasn't sure like my housing, everything. I had a lot of financial issues for myself. I was paying for everything, so that was like a big driver for this job. Was that I had a financial burden, but for the spring semester, I heard back, I would say it was November, because I started this spring. So it was November of last year was when we did like interviews, and I think I heard back the first or second week of December. And then I moved January 2nd. So I moved over winter break and I moved right into my space that I'm in now. It can take a little bit longer, can take a little bit less, but typically we do have a hear back date. So what happens is that through our application process, you will go through the normal application pool as everybody else will. You go through the normal interviews as everyone else. If you say in that interview that you would like to work spring, it is taken under consideration. If you happen to get chosen for spring, you will hear back by December. If you do not happen to get chosen for spring, you'll hear back in February. So you'll hear back at some point, but it's specifically if you did for spring, you'll hear back by December. So I know Haley can say the actual dates on that and everything, but yeah. I would say around the December date.
That was perfect. Thank you. So for this year, we're looking at letting our spring hires know the second week of November is kind of what we're aiming for right now. We would need you to start going to HR by November 17th and need to be completed with your HR process before December 8th. Zoe was able to move into her room because the room was able to be vacant and cleaned before the end of the school year. Not everyone gets that opportunity. Some have to move like January 2nd or 3rd. That just is kind of circumstantial on if the room can be cleaned and turned and ready to go in time. But that's kind of what we're looking for this year. Everyone will be notified if they're still in the application pool in December, or if they've been hired, they'll know that second week of November. But that was pretty perfect. Thanks, Zoe. All right. Next question is from Annalisa. What does the day-to-day look like as an RA? Nathan, do you want to take this one?
Sure.
Perfect.
The day-to-day is different every day. I think I'll start with your duty day. Most communities, you'll have a set day that you work your office shift. So really, before that, I'm chilling. I'm going to class. I'm doing my thing. And then at 4:45, I'm in the office. I sit in the office from 4:45 until 8 p.m. And then from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., you are on call. So if anybody calls the phone, is locked out, there's a leak, there's whatever issue going on, you do need to go respond to that, even if it's at 3 a.m. But you do not need to stay awake that whole time. I'd be snoozing on my shifts. Otherwise, just depending if you have any, kind of program scheduled, you can spend some of your day planning on that and then, attend or host that program later that day. I typically like to meet with my residents for check-ins. I have quite a few every week. So I usually have 1 or 2 of those every day. And then you have your weekend shifts. Those are 24-hour shifts, 4:45 to 4:45. You don't have to sit in the office at all. But again, you have the phone. If it rings, you're responsible for responding. But otherwise, I kind of just try to sprinkle in some housing work here or there, but not many of my days look the same.
Awesome. Thank you. No, I don't think any RA day will truly ever look exactly the same. You have maybe some of the same functions and responsibilities, but they never all add up together to equal the same day, for sure. All right, so the next question from McKenna. Hello, is it hard to get the type of dorm that you put first on your application? Kenny, I was going to throw this to you. I don't know if you'd be the best example for this because I don't think you have your first preference.
I did not have my first preference. No. Rosen's a bit far. If you don't know what UCF looks like, the main campus is where the majority of RAs are, and the only other community available to them outside of that currently is now Rosen, and Northview, but Northview's kind of close to the main campus, so we're not going to talk about them. But Rosen's about half an hour away by bus, so thankfully there's a shuttle Monday through Friday that I can take to go to class when I need to. But that was not the first community I picked. Communities, in fact, pick you, not the other way around. You can put preference for like where you may want to live, but like if you're someone who's like, I know I really want to be RA. In fact, I need to be an RA because of like financial circumstances. I would check every box because otherwise, like, no, it's just the best way to get the job because really communities are just looking for someone to fill in who like they need. And, that's the best way to do it. That's actually how I did it. So it's how I ended up at Rosen and I really like it here. In terms of like which one you're going to get, that's why there's no real percentage on that. It's really just kind of luck of the draw of like who needs you and who are you going to be most helpful for. Same thing for like what kind of dorm you might be living in. So you may be one of those RAs. We have a few who have a roommate because not all of our dorms are 1-1, which is 1 bathroom, 1 bedroom. I was actually in a 2-1 for my first year here at Rosen, but now I'm in my 1-1. So, you get where you want to eventually, especially like after that first year. If you really can't live on your community, you can request to be taken to another community. But once again, like, they'll try, but it's really who they need.
Yeah. Zoe, did you get your preference in where you wanted to live?
I got my number one preference. So I lived in a different tower as a freshman, and I started as like my fall semester freshman, and then my spring semester freshman, I moved to a different tower. So I already knew towers. I loved it over here. I was very involved. We have something called Towers Area Council that we'll go talk about a little bit later, I'm sure. But yeah, it's really dependent on what they need. What do you think is going to suit you best? For me, I really like working with athletes. That's something that I'm very passionate about. Sports, I'm very passionate about, exercise and that kind of thing. So that is something that we have very prevalent in towers, and that's kind of something that I enjoyed working with, as well as upperclassmen. So it really just depends on what they're looking for, but that's something to note in your application too, is that if you are if you want to work with a certain type of people or a certain cohort that you're interested in, we have the LCCs, or LLCs, all of those that we can talk about a little bit later too, but I did get my first preference.
All right, and Nathan, did you get your first preference?
When, for my first application, I got my second preference. I was living in Neptune as a freshman, and I did want to stay in the academic village, which is Neptune, Nike, and Hercules, but my second choice was Towers, and that is where I got placed. I actually worked with Zoe. But I would say going into it, keep an open mind. Some communities will surprise you, and you'll realize that you really like it in Lake Claire, and you might not have ever thought you would like Lake Claire. So I definitely keep an open mind, definitely look into what populations each community serves. And then also, if you want to continue this RA journey after your first year, you're always allowed to, request to switch communities. That was a big thing for me this past year. I had done 2 years in Towers, and I was ready for something different. I was ready for all freshmen. And so, like, don't allow yourself to just, like, be put in a corner, because there's always more experiences, and just keep an open mind through it all.
Yes, thank you very much. Those are great answers for everyone. I do want to touch on this. Usually comes up if you don't pick Rosen at all as somewhere you're interested in living, we won't put you there. That is a question of people get kind of stressed out that they don't have any transportation, they don't have time in their schedule to be able to take the bus back and forth, and all their classes are on main campus, so on and so forth, even though Rosen is kind of the most beautiful place to live and has, the best staff ever. I didn't say that. But, people sometimes aren't able to make that drive. So if you don't pick Rosen at all, we will not consider you for Rosen at all. That just may mean that at the end of the day, when we're selecting, you may not get a community at all. So you have to be specific, as Kennedy was kind of mentioning. Kennedy's top priority was to become an RA. And regardless if that was an RA at Rosen or on main campus or wherever, the priority was to be an RA. Therefore, Kennedy chose to also include Rosen. So just kind of a little food for thought. Rosen's amazing. It's so beautiful down there. Truly, truly. You're like living at a resort. It's amazing. All right. So the next one is housing completely free for an RA. Okay, I think we're back at Zoe if I'm going in an order kind of ish enough. So Zoe, if you can answer this, if you can, if not, I can kind of give the extra context to it because it's kind of a trick question.
Yeah. So yes and no. So you pay with your time is kind of how it works. So yes, your dorm technically is completely free. So you do have like your own room. You are guaranteed that you will have housing. You don't have to pay it by semester or anything like that. We do have a little stipend that we do work off as well that we can talk about a little bit later. I'm sure Haley will go into the logistics on that and the certain payments and everything. But yes, housing is completely free. However, you do work and you are contracted in to work a certain amount of shifts. You're working with like certain events, certain things that that you do have to uphold. Like you do have like certain events that you have to do, certain things you have to work with. But overall, if you're just asking if you're just paying for housing, no, you're not.
Yeah, so we consider your housing as part of your compensation. So to make math very easy, because math is sometimes hard for me and many other people, let's say over an entire year, we have $10 for one RA. This is so that it is simple, easy math. We give you more than $10 for your whole year. I promise you're worth so much. So we have $10 to give to one RA for the whole year, okay? Their housing costs $5 for the whole year. So we take that $10 and we subtract their entire housing cost from their overall stipend. So there goes $5. They are left with $5. We take that $5 and we divide it out into a biweekly paycheck for their contracted period. So that's like the most simple way I can explain it, which is why you'll see that some of our RAs get paid different amounts. Because if you are working and living somewhere like Northview, which has a lot of amenities like an in-building gym, a pool, a beach volleyball court, all those amazing things, that cost of living is a little bit higher than maybe that of one of our first buildings on campus, such as Apollo or Libra. So while Northview might be $5 a year to live in, Libra and Apollo might be $3 to live in. So if a Libra or Apollo RA was given $10 and their housing only costed $3, they'd have $7 left to divide out the year. But if a Northview RA was given $10 and their housing costs $5, they only have $5. So I know math is hard. This sounds weird. So that is how our RAs kind of get a little bit of different pay. It's relatively similar. But those who live in a more expensive building with more amenities get in cash in their check less biweekly than some that live in our less expensive communities to live in. So we do consider housing as part of your overall compensation. All right, if you're open to starting in spring or summer, is that something you communicate in the application or interview? All right, Nathan, you want to talk about this one? If you remember, it's been a minute.
It has been a
Probably
minute.
like the oldest RA, like year-wise on here. So
Yes.
yeah, it's been the longest since you've submitted your application, but if you remember, you can answer.
I do remember it. You do communicate that in your application, and you are asked again in your interview, if I'm remembering correctly. Whether or not you communicate that in your application or not, they're probably still going to ask you in your interview, and who knows, you might have changed your mind. But yeah, you will communicate that ahead of time.
All right, and Nathan, you have a twofer. I'm going to give you this one from Miles because you said you worked in Lake Claire, right, when you started?
No, I worked in Towers, but I can talk about this one.
That's awkward. Okay, Miles, Nathan's still going to answer this question. Is there a way to opt out of getting your own room as an RA? I really enjoyed the roommate experience so far, and for now, I'd choose to have roommates if I could. Kenny, I know you had this experience too with a roommate, but okay, Nathan, go ahead and start, and Kennedy, you can maybe add on to it if there's anything missing after Nathan's answer.
Yeah, so you're not technically going to opt out of anything, but most RAs live in a 1-by-1. However, in Northview, I believe you share a 2-by-2 with another RA. And then in Lake Claire, you live with residents. You live with 2 other residents instead of 3. And then Apollo, you also live with residents. So there is a way to still get that. And if you want to keep that in mind when you apply, but you're not technically opting out of anything.
Yeah, so it's not a guarantee, but we have been able to make it work in the past where if you are specifically selected for a community that does have regular resident roommates, we sometimes can work with our assignments team to try and get those standard roommates in the same room as you for an RA. And so those communities where you have regular residents, I say regular residents because there's ones that have RAs as residents and your roommate, but those where your roommates are residents would be Lake Claire, Apollo, and there's one very special room at Rosen that also has a resident as a roommate, just one. Yeah, and then Kenny, you want to talk about that experience about being an RA and having a resident roommate?
Yes, because a resident roommate and an RA roommate are 2 very different things. First, for just so you know, for Rosen, usually it's going to be like a first year RA who will have like the resident with an RA, the RA room with a resident in it. Whereas we have 2 floors that are mostly for first year RAs, but back to actually living with a resident, it can be different and it can be difficult if you don't know how to separate yourself as like a roommate and yourself as a RA, because you have to remember, even in that space with your roommate, you are still an RA and have to not only follow all the rules, but be that role model as well as be there for your roommate because you are still their RA. Generally, any conflicts between you are going to be handled by a coordinator and or a graduate coordinator of your community rather than any fellow RAs, just because we also want to keep in mind that that power imbalance is there, right? So it may not be the same experience as having a regular roommate as you're used to if you become an RA with a roommate, just because you have to keep that all in mind, right? But it's not too difficult. It's really just advocating for yourself while also making sure you're advocating as an RA for that resident in the spaces where that's appropriate.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. That was the exact answer I was looking for. It's a lot of fun. It's great to be rooming with people you know and residents. But at the end of the day, like you said, not only do you have to make sure you're following the rules and you're a good role model, you also have to enforce the rules on your residents. And that can sometimes get you into a more difficult situation because you're having to have accountability conversations with the people in your room that maybe wouldn't happen as often if you were a regular resident as well. Definitely doable. And you definitely, like you said, have a coordinator support and graduate coordinator support throughout that whole process. So again, the RA rooms that share rooms with residents would be Lake Claire, one specific room in Rosen, and then half of the RAs in Apollo share rooms with residents. This is definitely also something you can know on your application that is something that you're interested in. All right, so then we have McKenna. I'm in Towers until the end of summer. If I'd like to work over the summer, how does that work? Would I have to move out of my current room in Towers to a room in the community I work in? ? Zoe, one of our Towers people, I'll go ahead and have you take that one.
Okay, so I had this exact scenario that happened. So I was in Towers and I got picked for a different tower. So yes, you will have to move out if you get picked to work in summer. If you choose to work in summer, yes, you will move out. You don't have to worry too much about if you had any financial reasons or anything. If you have, if you were paying for it, your agreement will get canceled. Most likely your roommates will get a new roommate. That's what happened to me. My roommates have a new roommate this year. So that's how it would look like, is that yes, you would move out of your room in towers, depending on if you started in spring or summer, what that date timeline will look like. But yeah, you will move out most like as soon as you can, so you can get working with your job as soon as you can. It's just easier if you have a little bit more time to kind of get into the groove of things a little bit more. So, but that's up to Haley for those kind of dates and decisions. But yeah.
Very true. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So we have another question from Sophia, and I feel like we could spend an entire hour long Q&A on this question alone. So maybe I'll have all three of you give just a couple examples of some duties of an RA that you all serve in. I will say that on the application, last year's position description is attached there, which is like a 14-page document that includes all the duties, roles, responsibilities, and expectations of all of our RA staff. So that really goes into the nitty-gritty of things. But if you all want to share just like a couple of the first ones that come to mind and maybe explain them a little bit, that would be perfect. We can start with Nathan, Kennedy, and Zoe and kind of go in that order. I know I told you all beforehand I'd mix this up, and I have not, but it's actually been very, very easy for me to keep track of this, way more than in previous Q&As.
Okay.
And Nathan, whenever you're ready.
Yes. I kind of thought about this in my head first. So I'm going to talk about more of the social duties of the RA, because I feel like we kind of get bogged down and like you're on duty, you're having calls, whatever. So some of the more social aspects, you do need to kind of come up with a floor theme every year, every semester, depending on what your coordinator determines. And with that, you are making your flyers, you're making door decks for everybody. You can go above and beyond and do floor decks to really make, this house a home. Otherwise, you're hosting programs for your resident. They can be fun programs. You guys can watch movies, or they could be more educational. I've done a million programs of every kind, and they're actually super fun to plan. And then it's super fun when they are a success. You are also meeting with your residents on a regular basis, one-on-one, just to check in on them and, get them connected to what they need to get connected to, as well as get connected to you. And I just like to say I like to know the people that I'm living with. So those are kind of some of the social aspects of the role.
I'll probably move on to the more administrative aspects since we've had a lovely social aspects presentation. But some of the ones that may not be as fun but are still necessary and still incredibly important are those like duties involving like incident report writing, which is you as the RA like coming upon some kind of incident or like anything where there's like an interaction with anyone in the community or police where something's happened and like this is something that's reportable, which you'll learn as you like get into the role. There's a specific way to write them, and you'll learn that in the role, not only from training, but from your fellow RAs, because you'll never be doing them alone, and you should never be on duty alone and never reporting on anything alone. So like in the RA role, like always keep that in mind, like you are never alone in whatever you're doing. But that's like just one really big one, because as an RA, you're probably, even like just being on call once a week, you're probably doing at least 1 or 2 a week incident reports, and in a month like you could be doing anywhere from a range of like 3 to 10. It just depends on like your community and what's going on and what your coordinator prefers to be like in incident reports, like emails, whatever. Like you'll see it when you get there. It also means phone call communication and knowing like not only like laws and rules and things like that, but like understanding how to interact in this like environment as an authority figure. So that includes learning things like FERPA and learning things like what's appropriate and inappropriate to say to a person who you are, power authority for. So just keep all that in mind, because it's stuff you'll learn, but it's stuff that's really important to the role.
Okay, you guys touched on a lot, so I'm going to try to like fill in the gaps a little bit. Just a few of the other things that we deal with is that our job is a lot of people. So I know Nathan talked about the social aspect, and honestly, the social aspect is one of the biggest things. I really think that it's about knowing yourself also, is like knowing if you're an extrovert, knowing if you're an introvert. This job is a little bit easier if you're an extrovert. I'm extroverted, so I don't mind talking a lot to people, maybe people who don't really want to talk to me. But sometimes that happens with residents. Sometimes residents are just like, oh, it's the RA, they're scary. And I think that that's a big thing, is that like you shouldn't make Like, yes, you have an authority figure. Yes, you have a job to do, but at the same time, like, you are also a student. You understand what they're going through, and just let them kind of know that. And that's something to talk about, is that, like, Kenny, you did a great job with talking about, like, the things that they have to know, like FERPA and like Title IX, and all. You'll get through all those, like, incident report and everything. But it's really about knowing the campus, and it's about knowing, like, what we offer, like CAPS, so like counseling and psychological services, like the RWC, the Recreational Wellness Center, some things that you can talk about with the residents, and some things that, like, they might spark a conversation. They might, you might learn something about them. And it's really just what Nathan said. You're making our residence hall just a little home for them. Some of these kids have never been away from their homes. Sometimes some of these kids don't know how to do laundry. And honestly, you're just like, I like to say that I'm like my dorm mom. Like, I want to, like, walk these kids through it. I want to be like, oh, well, I kind of know what's going on now. So if you need anything, like, I'm there. Like, sometimes I make my kids brownies. Like, it's just kind of like having that. So I think that's a huge part, is that, like, being an RA, yes, there is a lot of paperwork. Sometimes there's going to be really quiet nights, sometimes really, really busy nights. But I think it's just about finding that balance, and you'll kind of fall into that as well. But the main priorities of the RA role are that be somewhere when you need to be there. Be whenever you need it. If your duty partner needs you, you are there. The most important thing is to be reliable. It's the number one thing I say, reliable, and communication. Is that our whole job is talking to each other. It's talking to other people in housing. It's talking to the residents. So I think that is probably the biggest thing of being an RA. It's not just, oh, you live there. It's, hey, this is going to be, something that we work through together. So that's my take on it.
Absolutely. You three did such an amazing job of really sparsing down what is a very big, very complex role. And I just want to add onto it that they didn't just learn all of this from reading the 14-page position description document. We do have training. We have it 2 times a year for everybody to attend, and 3 times a year if it's your first year. So if you are starting in the spring, we have a new RA only training that we do the first week of January. And then outside of that, we do training in May and in August that every RA goes to every single year. So it's not like you go to training one and done and you move on and you never get trained again. We have you continue to do training, and we have training split out if you're new or if you're a returner, so that you can kind of expand on things you've learned previously. So all these things about FERPA and the incident reports, how to write them, and what by law you can and can't say on certain topics, and all the things are not things that they all had to just like Google and YouTube University. They have gone through extensive trainings that we also would do for any new hires. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows that they're not kind of going into it blind. And I think Kennedy mentioned that you're never on duty alone or going through any of these scenarios alone. Not only do you have a duty partner, but you always have someone to call up to while you're on duty, or you have your full-time professional master's level coordinator or a graduate coordinator in the office to be able to go to for assistance during all of this. All right, so our next question from Annalisa: do the people who serve as your reference have to submit their letter of rec separately? I just said Kennedy, right? I'm now kind of forgetting it. Okay, great. Kennedy, go ahead and answer that.
So in fact, because you'll never see the system because they're doing the letter of recommendation, there is no letter you're required to do at all. In fact, it's kind of like a little answer thing that your recommendation does. So they're not required to submit a letter whatsoever. So don't worry about needing a letter specifically. They're just going to answer on a website some questions about you and like the recommendation status they're giving you.
Yeah, and Kennedy, you don't have to give names, but who were your references? Like, what were they in relation to you? Who'd you pick?
So I actually picked a high school teacher who knew, like, because I applied when I was a freshman, who knew my work ethic, and I'd worked on like several things with him in high school, so he did one of my recommendations. And then I also had like a volunteer coordinator do one of mine, so I like volunteered for an elementary school, and so she agreed to do a letter of rec for me as well. So don't worry if like none of yours are college level. Like some of us only have high school level references, and that's okay, as long as you can get in contact with that person and they can click on a link on their computer. They're okay to do it for you, as long as they're not family or someone related to you in any way, and not what's the word I'm looking for, not related to housing in any way. So like it can't be like a coordinator for a community, even though they may know you well and you were like on an RHA representative or something. Like they can't do it, unfortunately.
Yeah. RHA area council members can write the letter of rec, and so can like RAs. It just can't be pro staff members who supervise RAs. So no graduate coordinators of communities and coordinators of communities, and absolutely 100% no family members in any relation to you. I'm sure mom, dad, grandpa, grandma, sister, aunt, uncle, Aunt Stacy, whatever, thinks you are just the bee's knees. But we already know that, and so we don't need to hear it from them. I'm sure they think you're the greatest since sliced bread. Zoe, who did you pick for your references?
I believe one of them was an RA. She wasn't my RA, but I worked with her through the Housing Leadership Institute, which was a housing conference that we do in the summer. It was her, and I believe it was my intro to engineering professor. I believe it was her because she was really awesome, and we worked together on different projects as well.
Nice. And Nathan, if you remember, who did you pick for your references 3 years ago?
We're going back in time. To my recollection, this may or may not be true. Again, I applied as a freshman. I believe it was 2 teachers from high school. I know for a fact one of them was a teacher, but I also tutored with him. So he kind of saw me in more than just a student. And I believe my other reference was a teacher, but I also just like helped her a lot, and we were kind of just like homies. And so she kind of got us also get a glimpse of me outside of like I'm a student.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Zoe, you've got the next question. This is from Megan. Does the position allow enough time for another campus job, or does the stipend pay enough not to have to?
Okay, so this really depends on how you live. Personally, I'm a little bit luxurious. I like a lot of things. I'm a gym rat, so protein is very, very expensive. So for me, I have another job off campus. We do have rules with having a job off campus. I believe you can't work more than 15 hours without being approved. I don't work that much, so it's kind of just like a little thing I do on the side. But I recommend that you do something off campus or you do something that's on campus. The only thing is that you can't have another housing job. So for me, I worked as a housing ambassador. So they like staff the phones and they do the housing tours that you guys see when you guys first come into campus. I was doing that, and I had to transition to the RA role. So unfortunately, you cannot work in 2 jobs in housing. But I know a lot of people who work in housing and also work for the student union, or they work for the College of Business or something like that. So I think it really depends also where you're working, because as towers, we have a little bit nicer amenities, so we get a little bit less. So it really just depends on how the apple falls. But I recommend that you do something like that. If you are okay with, living on a little bit less, that is perfectly fine as well. It just depends on your financial situation.
Perfect. I think that's great. I'm going to touch on this one just real quick from Naya. As an RA, depending on the community you're in, will you either have a dorm to yourself or share a dorm? We talked about how you share with residents, but I don't know if I named exactly where you share with other RAs. So Northview, you share a room with one other RA. Towers, you have rooms to yourself. Lake Claire, you share with residents in all of the RU positions. Libra, you have rooms to yourself. Apollo, half the Apollo staff has a room to themselves, and then half the Apollo staff shares with residents. Neptune, Nike, and Hercules all have their own room. Rosen also all has their own room, except for one room where you have a shared space with a resident. All right. And then Kayla asked, would I be able to apply as a senior? Do you all want me to answer this? I feel like this is more logistically. You can apply as a senior as long as you are going to also be here from May 2024 to May 2025. So if you're a senior and you're going to be a super senior or more than a super senior, that is all a-okay. No problems there as long as you are enrolled full-time and you're going to be here for the full contracted year. So May 2024 to May 2025. You don't have to start in May, even if you do like the little exemption and you start in August. In that case, it'd be August 2024 to May 2025. But you have to be able to work the whole contract. So if this is like you're looking to start in May 24, but you're graduating in December of 24, that unfortunately would not work out. So yes, a full year, but you can apply as a senior. That is totally fine. All right, Austin, we're glad to have you. Just got here. I was on the wrong live stream. So sorry. What all did y'all talk about so far? You can scroll back through the comments, but also this is going to be posted live, or the recording is going to be posted, the whole live, so you can go through and rewatch it as soon as we finish, just so I can make sure that we get through all these last couple questions in the last 15 minutes. But I did want to say that we're real glad that you're here. All right, we've got Tortellini. Are the supplies to decorate the floor paid for by the school, or did the RAs have to buy them? Do we get a special fund for floor events? Nathan, I think it's your turn. Why don't you go ahead and answer that one?
Yes. So a skill that you will learn, if you haven't learned it already in the RA role, will be budgeting. Each community has their own budget, and that gets split up to many things. One of them being for office and craft supplies. Another one of those is for RAs to use for their floor events and other engagement activities. For your events, you will receive a budget. Certain communities do it different ways. Certain communities, each RA has a budget for the whole semester. Other communities, you get a budget per event. But you can also partner up with other RAs and, make the most of your money. So that is for your events. And then supplies are purchased for your community and shared with your community. Some places have more than others, and so sometimes you kind of got to build that stockpile up. But yeah, this should all be paid for by your community. I will say personally, I'm not going out and buying loads of cardstock, but like if I have to buy one or two things for like $10, I don't mind doing that, but that's me. So don't go out of your way to buy things if you don't need to. I'm having a watch party on Thursday, and I just quickly ran out and bought like cookies for cheap, but that's on me. Okay. Don't waste your money if you don't have to.
Yeah, we definitely never ever expect you all to spend your own money. However, if you are like Zoe, who mentioned she lives a life of luxury, and you want, just a little bit, and you want some of your events or maybe your floor decorations, maybe the poster board on your floor to be extra glamorous, you want some rhinestones on there, you want just all the things, and to you, it's worth it for you to get your vision, to spend a couple dollars out of your own money to complete the vision. That's on you. We never ever expect you to spend any of your own money to do your RE job, and we will always provide you with enough money to meet the expectations of your RE duty. I say that very specifically, meet the expectations of your RE duty. It's not always to get a bounce house and a pony and everyone gets Beats for Christmas, but it is enough for you to make door decks and create a nice living environment and throw a couple programs for sure. Okay, that was Nathan. You answered that one right? Yeah. All right, so this is for Kennedy. It's from Austin. I'm a freshman right now trying to apply for the 2024 year. What is the right semester for me to apply on the application? Kennedy's got a great answer for you.
Yeah, because in fact, I believe October 1st is the date for when our application is due. If you apply by October 1st, that is the consideration for the majority of positions for fall 2024, with probably a few for spring, depending on if we have any open positions. But yeah, so this is the year for you. If you're currently in housing, talk to your RA. They're happy to tell you more about the job and what their application process looked like as well. As well as when you look back at the video, you'll see us talk about it a little bit as well.
Yeah, this is the time. Right now is the right semester for you to apply for next year, for sure. Once the application closes on October 1st, we don't open it again until July 1st. And that application that opens on July 1st is going to be for 2025, 2026, which is so wild. So this is the time to apply if you at all want to be an RA next year. All right, so again, we have Nia. Do you have to reapply to be an RA, or is that a different process? Zoe, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different for each semester. So you don't really have to I wouldn't say reapply. It's not as formal as the first hiring session. We just want to make sure that you're doing good for your job. At the end of the year, you do go through a performance evaluation with your coordinator, so whoever your boss is at the time, whatever community, and they usually make the decision. They decide, oh, yep, you were doing a sufficient job, you're doing your goals, you're meeting the requirements. Yes, you can do it again another year. You could move communities. You could go anywhere on campus. You could go to Rosen. Who knows? You will fill out your preference list still. But it's not like a technical thing where you have to go and interview again and hope you get it. More of it's like if you're meeting the criteria and you're doing your job correctly, then more than likely we would love to have you back for another year.
Yeah. And then Austin, you asked a pretty similar question. Does being an RA 1 year increase your chances of being approved as an RA again the following year? Do you have to reapply? Pretty much what Zoe just said. You kind of reapply. There is a reapplication process, but definitely not as formal. No real formal interview. You kind of have a chat with your supervisor on, your job expectations and how you've been doing with them. And then you can put in if you're interested in staying in the same community, moving communities, what have you. So we have 9 minutes left, and I just wanted to let you all know that with our time counting down, we have one more Q&A that's going to take place before the application deadline for this year, and that's going to be on September 28th from 5 to 6 p.m. It's going to be in person at the Student Union. It's going to be in the Golden Key meeting room, which is 220. So we'll keep answering questions, but if for any reason you don't get your question answered live today, or you're seeing this video recorded later and posted, feel free to join us on September 28th in the Student Union on the second floor. All right, Annette asked, RA rooms, do they all have kitchens, have fridge and stove? Oh, Annette, you're really, really testing my memorization here. Do you all know, or do you want to share your own, and then I can fill in what I know of the rest of them? Does that sound good? Okay, where are we starting? We're starting with Nathan, right? That's whose turn it is?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead, Nathan. Tell me what you know, and then I'll try and fill in.
Yeah. So in Neptune currently, I do have a kitchen, I do have a fridge and a stove. And that's the same for all of Academic Village, so Nike and Hercules as well. Do you want me to just list off everything I know?
Yeah, list them all off, and we'll just
Okay,
keep adding on. List what you know for sure. For sure.
Lake Claire, because you're sharing the apartment with other residents, you do still get the same amenities. So you have a kitchen that you share with them. I believe Libra, you do have a kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Towers, you definitely have a kitchen as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then Northview, again, you have a kitchen in that apartment that you share with another RA. It's really just Apollo and Rosen that I don't know.
All right, Kennedy, tell us about Rosen.
So if you don't know, Rosen is all apartments community, unlike some like Libra and everywhere where they might just be dorms where the residents won't expect to have a kitchen. Here, not only do the RAs have kitchens and stoves and everything, as well as microwaves, which not every other community can boast. We also give you a microwave here. But all of our residents have the same thing. So that means our fire alarm's a little different, but they all have them just like we do. As for Apollo, I want to say that they get a kitchen, but I'm not sure.
All right, so very good job, everyone. Little pop quiz, I guess, made Q&A. So Apollo, the second floor RAs have a kitchen in their private rooms, but the first floor RAs that share rooms with residents do not have a kitchen. And Kennedy also pointed out a good point that not all of our RA rooms have built-in microwaves. Therefore, you have to bring a microwave for some of them. It's like half the rooms in Libra. Again, the bottom half for Apollo that don't have a kitchen at all. And I think that's it, right? You all have, AV has built-in microwaves. Towers, do you have built-in? No? Okay, towers, you need to have microwaves too. Cool. There we go. Thanks, Annette. You asked a really good question. All right, but yes, so everybody has a built-in full kitchen except for the half of Apollo RAs. All right, this next question. Austin, the application wants a GPA, but I'm a freshman and I don't have a GPA. What should I list? You can just put a 0. this will not take you out of consideration, and we're going to pull your GPA from the registrar's office at the end of the semester anyway. So don't worry about it. It's not going to like disqualify you. You can put a 0. That's totally fine. All right, Matthias says, do you need to apply to be an RA in a specific community, or do you just apply to be an RA? And once you're accepted, then the housing department assigns the community you'll work in. All right, Kennedy, you want to answer this one?
So in your application, you'll put in a preference for the community you'd like to be in. And so essentially you just apply to be an RA, but say like, I'd totally love to work here. Rosen will be more specific for us just because we're a little bit far. If you don't click on us, you won't be considered for Rosen at all. Same if you're not clicking on any other community. But just know that that means that, hey, if like it's not in your preference, then you might not be chosen for any community. So if you click all of them, like obviously you're going to have a better chance because that just gives you at least 8 more positions or whatever, however many there are to be considered for. But once you're accepted, it's not that housing assigns you, it's that each community will choose from the pool of RAs to be like, I want this person because they really fit my community, or they actually work with athletes, so they're going to be perfect for towers too, like Zoe here. So that's kind of how it works, really.
Yeah, so our communities are actually bunched into groups. So you have all of Academic Village together, which is Hercules, Nike, and Neptune. And then your next group is going to be Libra, Apollo, and Lake Claire. Your next group is all 4 of the Towers buildings, and then you have Northview and then Rosen. So you can click and move them over on your application saying, I will work in these places. And then from there, you can rank them to where you'd most prefer to work. And then after that, when we pick who we're going to hire and where they're going to place them, we try as much as we can to take your all's consideration into it. But at the end of the day, we're going to pick who's best to work in the staff that we're trying to create and the community that we're trying to foster. So that's our number 1 priority. And then we take your community preference after that. All right. And then Austin, can you have an internship while being an RA? Does that apply the same as the 15 hours of work rule? Have any of you 3 had a class internship you've had while being an RA? Kind of, Zoe? All right, go ahead and answer.
I went through the process because I got an internship for an aerospace company that was, not really for a class or anything like that. So I went in depth with the process. For what I was told or what I was looking at, if it is going to be something that really hinders the role, I would recommend either trying to take a semester off from being an RA, because at the end of the day, academics does always come first in RAs. And honestly, housing understands that. They understand that the academics always comes first. This is something you really do need for your major, because I know some majors do need certain internships, or just it's going to better your career, that kind of thing. Don't really worry about it. I really don't want people to be like, oh, I can't do this internship. I need my RA job. Just talk to us. Just talk to Haley, talk to everybody. As long as you're communicating, as soon as you get that information, you'll be okay. During the year, I recommend that, 15 hours, keep it at that. If it's going to be over, again, just talk to them. Maybe your classes are a little bit lighter. Maybe you can handle it all. But again, just if you're not sure, it's always better to ask. So That's what my experience was.
Definitely. If it's required for class, sometimes we have a little bit of wiggle room. I would say to try and plan the internship out to take over summer, if that's possible, so that you can take that summer off of being an RA and it doesn't impact your contract. But again, if it's required for class and you really need your RA job at the same time, sometimes we can work with it as long as there's an end date to the internship. We've had RAs who start an internship for class and then stay on it forever, and it really impacts their work. So we'll try to work with you as much as possible, because as Zoe said, and I think everyone has said at some point, your classes are our first priority. You as a person is our first priority, and then you being successful in your classes are our second priority, and the RE position is third, always, and that's what we want you to prioritize as well. All right, Megan asked for credit hours. Is that at UCF or college in general? That is everything, all credits. So if you're bringing in credits, all that all counts as long as it's recognized by the UCF registrar. That does not mean that it all has to come from UCF, but as long as they're transferred credits in that are counted and looked at, those are all good. And we have Naya, what happens if you apply for housing but get accepted for as an RA? All right, Nathan, I think it's your turn.
Yeah, so this actually happened to me because I was an alternate. I was in the alternate pool. I did not originally get hired technically. So because of that, because the selection process is at the same time that most people are figuring out their housing, I just decided to enter the lottery for Towers. I got it, and I was living there, and then got the invitation to begin working as an RA. And so, I got to move and everything. And housing cancels that contract. You don't have to pay it out. Housing's got you. And that is the same with any UCF affiliated housing off campus, but that is not the same for any non-affiliated housing.
Absolutely. We can assist with leases at Night Circle or The Point. Anything outside of that, we cannot assist with, and on-campus housing. So all of on-campus housing that's run by us. So all of Academic Village, Libra, Apollo, Lake Claire, all of Towers, Northview, and Rosen, as well as Night Circle and The Point we can assist with. Outside of that, we can't. Okay, if it's okay with you three, we have 3 more questions left. Can we answer them? I know we're at 7. Kennedy, I know you actually have your staff meeting to go to right after this. So if you need to pop off at any time, that's totally okay. But since these questions were all asked right before or at 7, I'd like to answer them if that's okay. But if any of y'all need to go, that's totally fine too. So this next question is from Austin. For the application question, I know it offers 200 to 400 words. Is there an ideal length for what we should write? Should it be more brief or pretty extensive? I first just want to say, fully answer the question. You would be surprised on how many people read a multifaceted question and only answer the last question and then miss out on all the points that came with the question or the 2 questions that came before the last question. So that's like what I'm going to sprinkle on as the person who writes these questions. Oh, it kills me. Then that one answer is really, really good and they get like almost no points because they've only gotten like out of 5 points 1 for answering 1 of 3 questions. So Kennedy, I'll let you talk about kind of your experience at all if you want to add anything to that, but that's my tidbit.
Yeah, it's definitely just quality over quantity, I would say. Staying in the 200, 400 range isn't too hard as long as you do what she said, and just kind of answer all the questions. Like that's an attention to detail kind of thing. So like once we realize like, oh, you answered 1 question out of 5, like that kind of says something too, right? So just make sure you're paying attention.
Yeah, answer the question fully. You can do it. So Nathan, do you have anything very specific you want to add on to this? Any thoughts? Nah, perfect. All right, Annette asks, are there many nursing majors as RAs? I know nursing is pretty hectic. That is a fact. I know y'all are not nursing majors. Do any of y'all work with any nursing majors? Do you want to share anything? Yeah, Nathan? All right, Nathan, you want to take this one? And then Zoe, I'll give you the last one.
Perfect. I like to believe anything is possible. Here in Neptune, we do have an RA who's currently in nursing school, but they have also been an RA for many, many years. So with that comes experience, and they are able to balance those 2 because they've lived in this role for a hot minute and they understand what needs to come first. It depends on you. Nursing school is really stressful. So you really need to have that kind of self-reflection and also, talk with your coordinator, talk with housing staff and see what's possible. But at the end of the day, you need to put yourself first and you need to put your academics first. So if that means that you need to leave the RA role for that, that's totally respectable. We get it. Anybody in the world gets that. So definitely just do what's right for you.
Definitely. And we do have a nursing LLC. So if that's something that interests you, you would be the RA and supporting other nurses or nursing majors or pre-nursing majors. I do want to note that if you are not admitted to the UCF nursing school and the main campus one, and you're admitted to kind of one of the partner or sister nursing programs and have to move to one of those locations for nursing program and for your nursing school, you cannot continue to be an RA because you're not taking any UCF based nursing classes, it gets kind of funky. You can talk about that with your coordinator, because I know that you get into a nursing school like your junior or senior year, and not everyone gets into the UCF main campus nursing school. So that's something you can talk about with your coordinator when that time comes as well. All right, and so for our very last question of the night, we have Sophia, and this is going to go to Zoe. How does taking time off being an RA work, and will there be any form of penalty? Definitely not. Well, we want to we want you to live your life. Definitely no penalty. I just want to say that scares me.
Yeah. Okay. So we get 14 nights away per semester. So what happens is that we use Microsoft Teams. You'll go in there, you'll see under the shifts tab that you can actually request these nights away. So it goes right to your coordinator, and your coordinator can approve them. So it's just to make sure that we know that you're actually away. Because again, I mean, you are supposed to be here. This is even though you're not working every single day, you still are contracted to be here. For taking time off, we understand emergencies do happen. If an emergency does happen and you don't have a night's away, again, talk to us. And I mean, like, when we say talk to us, that it's not like it's a one-way street and that it's not going to go anywhere, is that you will get a response within at least like 48 hours. Like, they are so quick with responding, and they're always so accommodating for every scenario. I've had times where I'm just like, I need to go, I need to leave. And people are like, we get it, go, you need to go. And I was like, okay, cool. So I think it's that way too. If you're on duty and you need to take, you have something that you have to go to, message in the group chat. I guarantee one of your RAs will be there to be able to take that shift or just be able to cover you for a little bit, because that's the number one thing is that Kennedy made a good point about you'll never be alone. There's always two of you at least. There's always going to be two of you. If one of you really, really needs to go, it's okay. We understand. Just make sure you let other people know, because that can impact your whole team. That can impact your whole building depending on the scenario. So I think that is the biggest thing, is that, like, yes, take time off, go on vacation, have a good weekend, those kind of things. But we do have a thing where the rule is that if you're not in your room by 3 a.m., it's considered a night away. So just take it. If you know you're going to be gone, go home for the weekend. Just take that night away. 14 nights is honestly, it feels not like a lot. It's a lot more than you think. Mm-hmm. So that's my tidbit on it.
Yeah. All right, that is the end of this Q&A. I want to remind everyone again that we have one more. Pulling it up. It is September 28th from 5 to 6. It's going to be in person in the Student Union in the Garden Key meeting room, which is room 221. So we hope to see you there 10 days from tonight to answer any last minute questions that you may have before the application deadline, which is October 1st of this year. So application closes, there it is, October 1st. At 11:59. Make sure to submit your application. And I want to real quick give a huge thank you to our RAs here. Excuse me. And I want to highlight some of the thank you messages you've gotten. So for school says, thank you everyone for your question, for answering our questions. This was a ton of help, and I feel way more confident going into the process. Naya says, thank you, panel, for taking time out of your day to answer our questions. Annalisa says, thank you all. You were so helpful. And then McKenna says, thank you so much. And we just got one more from Austin. Thank you for answering all my questions. So yes, big thank you to our RA panelists. You guys are the bomb. And I really appreciate you all being here and helping me tonight as well. If you all have any questions on your RA application, you can email us. And I just put the email up. So questions, email reslifeselection@ucf.edu. And the application can be found at ucf.ereslife.com. There is the application link. Thank you all so much, and we will see you at our next Q&A. Don't forget, the application closes October 1st. Bye.